to just the mildly stupid things I do. All right, so we're now recording. There will, people are probably still going to kind of stumble in. Very few of us are actually here yet. I don't quite know why, but that does sometimes happen. Let's see, hold on. All right, one of the things I'd like you to do so that I don't have to sit there and waste your time taking roll is, if you would please use the chat function and just check in with the chat function, okay? Just, it will show whatever name is on your screen, but then just sign in with the actual name that's on the roll sheet so that I'll know you're here. And then that will save when I save the recording, and I can put the roll in later. I don't have to interrupt you to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, if you could please do that, that would help me a lot, because then we don't have to stop, okay? Just because I'm feeling perverse, did anybody watch the debate last night? You American citizens, you.
Yes.
Patricia, you did.
Yes.
Who did? Oh, you did. Oh my God, there's still a hangover from it, huh?
Honestly, if I wanted to watch two old white guys who are high on OxyContin, I would have just gone to a family reunion.
Talking to an old white guy, I can accept that, because first thing I noticed was when I watched that, I felt disturbingly young. It was like, who are these old fools? It was like listening to my dad when he used to get pissed off, except that it never stopped, It's interesting. Sorry, who did I just interrupt? I'm sorry. Zachary, was that you? Did I step on you?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, sir.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm just saying we might want to have to do that thing again where you kill your video when you talk.
Sorry.
Only so that we can then hear you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, what were you going to say?
I don't know why it's the standard recently, at least within like the most recent election cycles and presidencies, for them to be as ancient as possible. Like, I know the youngest age is 35, but you never see a president who's like younger than 70.
Well, yeah, you do. Of course you do.
Well,
you don't remember Barack Obama?
And Kennedy.
Well, Kennedy you won't remember, let's be fair, but Barack Obama was not old. He was in his 40s.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, but the past...
George W. Bush, hold on. George W. Bush was in his 40s. Okay?
Man, I feel
That's
young.
not old. I know it seems like it is, but that ain't old. I could still box when I was in my 40s. Okay, that ain't old. So, I'm just saying that, no, I mean, you're not going to get a bunch of, dudes in their 20s, but this is different though, because this was like watching, and I think, Zachary, I know what you're thinking, because if you go back to 2016, it looked kind of the same. It was two old white people. And their vice presidential nominees were two relatively old white people. And there is something kind of pathetic about listening to old white guys talk about race. It's kind of like, what? Wait a minute. Let me ask you this before we get into the, we're going to have a relatively short class today, by the way. There's relatively little we have to do, especially if what I'm asking you to do makes sense. This is going to be one of those days where you're going to have I'm not blowing you off, and I can stick around if people have questions or anything, but you have an assignment that will be due on Sunday night that we'll talk about in a second. But I wanted to take a minute since, you are all of voting age, and I know it was a pretty pathetic spectacle. I will give you that. What's interesting to me, as soon as I got out of bed early this morning, I fired up BBC because I fired up BBC and then CNN International to find out, what does the rest of the world see when they look at us? The phrase I kept hearing was decayed democracy. That American democracy is in decay. Do you think that's fair? It's a little histrionic, but do you think there's something to that? Or is that just kind of like, that's the thing we say when we try to be extreme?
Absolutely true.
Okay. Well, Zachary, I figured you would think that, and I don't mean any disrespect by that. You have a pretty dry view of America, and that's fine. You've made that really clear, and that's a perfectly legitimate view. I'm tempted to say, in the positive sense, a cynical view. A lot of people don't understand that cynicism in its properly understood philosophical form is someone who is dispassionate because of their knowledge. In other words, I know too much to be enthusiastic about this. And I think to some extent, Zachary, just in terms of some of the things you said, there's a little bit of authentic cynicism there. I would say there's also, as there is with anybody at any given time, there's going to be a little bit of naive idealism as well, that somehow things ought to be better. I can't tell. Eliza, were you raising your hand?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. I
You're
forgot
in
what the question
extreme
was.
close up there. It's very Hollywood, so sometimes it's hard to tell. Go ahead.
Yeah. What was the question again? I literally had an answer and then I forgot the question was.
Well, I was wondering, what you thought about this idea that I heard about decaying democracy. Somehow, this is an example of America in decline, I guess.
I think that other countries have always looked at us like we're a little weird with our politics. I don't think they've ever thought we're like awesome with that area.
But this is, I would say that this is different.
Yeah, this is like they're like, okay, America's gone a little bit too far this time.
Well, the implication is not that America's gone too far, but that we've gone backwards, that we've somehow regressed to some primitive state or something where, I mean, the idea that we are made fun of uniformly for the degree of superstition that we hold, the degree of gullibility that we demonstrate, and how easily our elections can be meddled with and things like that, to which I would say, particularly to Britain, Brexit, I mean, this is happening all over the place. That the concern is that internationally, what we had believed to be this rock-ribbed faith in some form of republic or some sort of representative system where people were invited to participate even indirectly, that whole institutional framework is on the verge of being in decline, if it's not already in decline. Do you think that's fair? Or would it be like, I don't know? I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. How many of you don't care? You're just like, look, I need to get through school. I need to get a job. I can't think about this stuff. I understand this is an international studies class, but realistically, I just don't care. That is a legitimate point of view. I don't happen to share it, but I understand that frustration. Yeah, Patricia?
I disagree with Eliza because I think the view of Americans around the world for I don't know how long, people looked up to Americans. They thought we were the world's heroes, and we were the leaders in the environment and everything else. I mean, we were the ones everyone looked up to. Now we're the joke.
Well, I think you're partially right in the sense that America now increasingly looks to be a joke from the eyes of the rest of the world. The challenge of America with respect to the more positive view of us as being heroic or innovative in terms of new technologies and ideas and concern for the environment and all that is it kind of depends on who you talk to and when. Because if you look at much of the world that used to be referred to as the third world, for example, people were terrified of the United States because we had not only the power, the capability, but we had the willingness to go into sovereign territories and simply tear them apart one way or another. We could do it, so we did. So, by the way, did the Soviet Union. This is the era of bipolarity that's not around anymore.
Like the wars that we, have in other countries to fight the Russians inadvertently.
Can you say that again? Because you cut out.
Proxy wars that we kind of start to battle with Russia on other people's territories. I'm thinking of maybe Grenada or Vietnam.
You could go anywhere in the world and find examples of that. Here's the thing, though. That's what great powers do. And by great, I mean simply in scope and capacity. I don't mean, aren't we great? I mean, dare to be great. One of the indications of great global power, you're going to make enemies because people are, think of us as a cultural empire, the degree to which we've exported our culture, or at least our pop culture, but to some degree also what we claim to be our values to the rest of the world, sometimes but not always at the barrel of a gun. And we've really been convinced, we refer to ourselves in biblical terms as a city on a hill. Okay. What that suggests is that there is a a cohort of Americans, and it isn't small, who really believe that we are endowed by a divine creator with a right to dominion over the world. That's not going to play well in very many parts of the world. It's going to terrify people. But on the other hand, there was a time, for example, during the Second World War, when people saw that white star on a green vehicle, they knew they could relax. But if they saw the swastika or they saw the red star, they ran. Have you ever heard of a guy named Wernher von Braun? Wernher von Braun. He is the person who essentially perfected American rocketry that allowed us to develop the Saturn delivery system for the Apollo missions and stuff like that. He was a Nazi. He wasn't just a scientist under the Nazi regime. He was an active, enthusiastic member of the Nazi Party who used slave labor to build the V rockets in the Blitz over London, okay? When the war was winding down in Germany, he and his group of scientists had a choice to make. Okay, we're either going to be captured. We're either going to be captured by the Americans or the Soviets, the Russians. And so what they did was they very quickly decided, you know what? Let's go find the Americans. Okay, they got on bicycles. There were like 40 or 50 of them, I think. And I think von Braun had a broken arm at the time. So he's riding around, you know, on his bicycle, right? They're looking for Americans to capture them before the Russians do. Knowing, yeah, I'm a Nazi, they won't care. And we didn't, you know. So see, a lot of people look at that and they look at it sort of, again, cynically and think, so what you're saying is you fought a war against fascism only to reap the benefits of that fascism in the form of their Nazi scientists so you could develop bigger and better weapons. You know, I mean, that doesn't sound heroic. So the narrative of the United States in the world has always been, as is with every large power, you know, a power capable of projecting force around the world, it's always going to be confusing. And we're going to have enemies. But what originally triggered this for me was this idea that somehow something's going on internationally and America is seen as in the vanguard of it. The same thing happened with the Reagan Revolution. You know, at that very time, Thatcherism was developing in England. And so Britain and the United States were sort of world leaders in moving away from this kind of demi-socialism and kind of redistributed, strong labor unions, all that kind of stuff that had built the American middle class. In the 80s, we turned against that, rebelled against it, and destroyed it. Okay, so did the Brits with Thatcherism. The rest of the world was kind of looking at that with a great deal of uncertainty. What does this mean for us? What does it mean when we hear the American president talk about, you know, unleashing capitalism and deregulating and all this? Don't you want those restraints on capitalism so that it doesn't roll over people? America and Britain were saying, no, we don't. We do not. And that terrified people. It also terrified Americans and Brits, because a lot of us got run over by those deregulations, okay? And if you talk to people in Flint, Michigan about their water supply, they're going to tell you that was a consequence of deregulation. And technically that's accurate. Mismanagement, but also deregulation. But in a lot of cases, like, you know, worker safety, things that American workers had fought violently for a century in order to accomplish, were unmade within a generation in terms of the guarantees of worker safety, the guarantees of collective bargaining that give workers a strength to have middle-class wages and things like that. All of that was pretty much broken apart during, that was the target of the Reagan Revolution. They succeeded amazingly well. And it's funny because I had a similar discussion in my political science 201 class yesterday. And there was a kid who I couldn't see at first, and then I realized his virtual background was a massive Trump banner, you know. And part of me thought, well, gee, should I disallow that? And I thought, my business is not to impede on this guy's free expression. But I could see him. I was explaining that he was like shaking his hand, because what he thought was that I was trying to say that the Republicans were evil and Democrats were good or something. And he assumed that to be the case. Why? Because I was a college teacher and we're all left-wingers, except we're not. You know, we're just not. But what I wanted to get from you, and this goes back again to the debate, is when you look at the United States in the world, not just, you know, your neighbors or your city or your state or whatever, but when you look at our position in the world, do you think that we are seen by the world in the way that you want us to be seen by the world? Or do you think you wish we were seen in a different way? Or more importantly, do you not care? Any of those is a legitimate expression, any one of those three things. Yeah, we're seeing, this is accurate, this is who we are, okay. Gee, I wish we were seen better, I wish we could do these things and be a better example, be seen as heroic, be seen as whatever. Or C, I don't care how anyone sees us. We're a sovereign country, we are our own bosses. We don't need the rest of the world. What do you think? Yeah, exactly.
I think the best way to possibly put it is, I'm sure at this point everyone here
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second.
Watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're basically the fire.
Okay, that's not working. We can't hear you. I think you're going to have to go back to the chat and write it out. Unfortunately, we got to do something about that Wi-Fi, man. It just isn't getting it. But anybody else? Yeah, it's an accurate picture, and I guess we accept it. B, I wish it was better. C, I don't really care. What do you think? This, and I'm going somewhere with this, by the way, apropos the election, apropos American politics, and you know why people polarize when they do. Or do you just really honestly have no opinion on this? Which I guess is that would be like option 4. Honestly, how many of you are like, I never thought about it, I don't have an opinion on it?
It's not so much as not having an opinion, and maybe this is the wrong thing to do, but I don't know, it's almost like I'm just kind of in the back, just like waiting things out, like seeing how like things are turning out, you know? Because I don't really know, and like this is, I mean, it's not a fun time that we're going through right now, so I don't know, maybe that's on me, and you know, me not thinking through and like getting my thoughts together, but that's where I'm at right now.
Well, I think that strikes me as a legitimate point of view. In other words, I'm not going to draw a conclusion until I feel like I've got more information. That's fair. We are not terribly well-informed people in this country. My common experience when I travel or when I entertain people from other countries is they know more about the political system than my students. Uniformly. Okay. Now, it's not because you're not smart, because it's clear that you are, because you're in college. But it has to do with our educational system. But more importantly, it has to do with the way that we do or do not consume news media. Most of you do not get much of your news directly from news media. You wouldn't know journalism if it ran over you in a tank. Okay? Because you don't experience it. And so that when you get your information, you don't have any way of knowing whether or not, or the extent to which it's reliable. And also, the overwhelming tendency in America, not just for your generation, but you could be anybody who's in this country right now, sitting here, and I'd say the same thing. The trend now is for Americans disproportionately to reject as absolutely indigestible any idea with which they think they disagree. And so what happens is, because of the idea of targeted sources on the internet and things like that, all you ever have to hear is things you agree with. Now, the problem with that for us, both nationally and internationally, is, first of all, how do we know if what we're hearing is accurate? Yeah, it sounds good and it makes us feel good. I like chocolate cake. I really do. I like banana cream pie. I really do. More than chocolate cake. I like banana cream pie. It's disgusting how much I like it. I like to smoke, okay? I used to smoke a pack and a half a day. And then I finally decided, you know, I got to stick around for a while because I got 2 kids to put through college. I probably should start taking care of myself. Maybe I should be a responsible adult. I'm the same way in terms of, people always ask me, well, where do you get your news? A lot of different places, okay? Because I have to hear what other sides are thinking, and I have to hear how we look from the vantage point of the rest of the world. No one expects you to do that. I do that because it's my job, okay? But the challenge is, where do you get reliable information? Where do you get your news of the world or of your own country? Where do you get your news? Let's say your information.
I use NPR a lot.
Well, what do you mean you use NPR a lot?
Oh, sorry. I have the NPR app on my phone. So then there's like usually little snippets of podcasts and whatnot, and then different articles ranging from, like politics to then international.
Okay, I'm willing to bet, Kennedy, that most of what you're listening to is not news. It's commentary. There is nothing wrong with commentary. But remember, the purpose of commentary is to express a specific point of view. Journalism properly understood, right? And I used to be one, okay? Journalism properly understood is doing the best you can to strip away and transcend your personal biases and try and get the story right. That's not the obligation or the responsibility of a commentator. None of what you're doing is wrong, but we have to be aware of that. Where else do some of you get your information? And how much of it would you say, how much of what you're listening to is really not news? It's not journalism, it's commentary.
I just Google current events and look at the details on it.
But that's not really a source. Google's not a source.
I honestly look at I am the same way. I want to look at different sides. So I'll go to I'll read from Fox, I'll read from CNN, I'll read from BBC, all those sites I'll read. That's where I get my.
That's playing it pretty safe. That's what you kind of have to do, is get, more than one source. But I would suggest, and I think many of us would be surprised to hear, the overwhelming majority of Americans, not only do they not do that, they have no intention of doing that, and they see no value in that. Okay. Because it does take a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy, and it demands a lot of you intellectually, because you are encountering things that challenge your own beliefs. And I don't care if you're liberal or conservative or what you are, the hardest thing for any of us to face is a compelling argument with which we disagree. Where it's like, you know what, I don't want to agree with that. I'm sorry, Patricia, are you putting your hand up? Sometimes I can't tell. Yeah, go ahead.
You have a news source that you could recommend that's non-biased, who just says straight news?
Well, see, the thing with me is, it's not so much that things be non-biased as that I am aware of their bias. So for example, when I get up in the morning, okay, so that I have the energy to eat breakfast and exercise and do the things I need to do, but also I got to get my brain working so that by the time you guys come along, I'm up and thinking, and if anything has happened overnight, I got to know about it. It's incredibly embarrassing when one of my students says, hey, what's going on in Azerbaijan? And I'm like, I got to get back to you on that. I remember when I first started teaching, that used to happen a lot. What I usually do, I have a subscription to SiriusXM, and it's in my car, but it's also on an app on my television because I have what's called a Amazon Fire Stick, right? I hate supporting Jeff Bezos' empire, but I gotta have that information, and that's the quickest way for me to get it. So I will usually I'll very quickly jump through. There's an app that just says news, and it's got NBC, ABC, and CBS. In other words, it's a streaming version of broadcast news, not cable news. Okay. The importance of that is that, whether, Donald Trump or anybody else wants to admit it, those old school broadcast networks, for all of their imperfections, are much less obviously biased than any of the cable networks. Okay. The reason why I will do that is if anything has happened really quickly, like something, right now, obviously I'm watching the fires in California and things like that, because I think that's where I'm going to be spending my weekend, is helping people move, right? And I need to be aware of whether or not I can get in and out of those areas and things like that. But in addition to that, what I mentioned Azerbaijan, this thing with Armenia and Azerbaijan that's already involved three other powerful countries, Russia, Turkey, and France. Okay, those things concern me, but they're also the stuff of what I do for a living. Okay, so I've got to follow those. So I will sometimes jump in on the networks, not for very long. I will see what the BBC coverage is, again, not for very long. Then I will go to Reuters because it's a wire service and they can't afford the luxury of being biased. Okay, I mean, I do a lot of things like that. I kind of jump around quite a bit. And then I'll do what I think Zachary was talking about, where I might need background, so then I start Googling stuff. If, in other words, if a political individual or an organization of some kind is introduced and I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure who that is, then I get on Google. It's like, and I'll check more than one source. But you see, that's my job. I mean, that's me working. I get paid to do it. Okay. But I would say if you want to try to minimize the amount of bias you get in your news, okay, you could do worse than Reuters or the Associated Press in terms of that wire service coverage, because what happens is they're trying to make their news coverage as balanced and generic enough that any newspaper or broadcast outlet could just plug that into their report and run with it. That was the whole purpose of wire services going back to the middle of the 19th century. Okay, so that's a good starting point. I think you probably then would want to check out Fox. What is Fox saying about this? What is NPR saying about this? What is MSNBC saying about it? Because MSNBC, the way I assess it, has functionally become the Fox News of the Democratic Party. A buddy of mine who does media analysis refers to them as MSDNC, you know, Democratic National Committee. But again, I want to know what they're thinking. And in terms of commentary, if something happens, yeah, I'm interested in what Rachel Maddow has to say. Of course I am. She's got a PhD in political science. She does try to get it right. Now, she has, you know, she has a dog in the fight ideologically, perhaps, but I can tell when this is her, you know, singing the praises of people she believes in as opposed to her trying to get it right. I know how to do that. And there is a certain sophistication that you acquire after a while. But it is a tough thing to do, and it makes this whole situation of the debate, right? How do I evaluate this debate? Well, the first reaction is gut. You know, two silly old white guys, you know, railing at each other and abusing OxyContin, you know, whatever it was. But you got to do better than that if you're going to vote, right? You got to make more sense of it than that. And the way to do that is to try to balance the way you get your coverage. Don't buy into, with the information that you consume, don't buy into anybody's partisan hype. Don't believe the first person who fills that gap in your mind. One of the things I always tell my students in the upper division courses in political science, as soon as you think you've figured something out, try to disprove it. Try really hard to disprove it. That was what got me through graduate school. I would be sure, man, I got this right, I've nailed this. And then I would stop and think, what if I were arguing against it? How would I dismantle my own argument? If you're doing that, and there are degrees of intensity, right? But if you're doing that, you're trying to be as thorough as you can be, and you're trying to mitigate your own biases. It's not easy to do, but that's what I would suggest. Now, any other questions on the debate or anything like that before we very quickly jump into what your next assignment is? Actually, your first assignment, because the first one was done in class. Okay. How many of you have the Moodle site in front of you? You can see it. Any of you? Okay, good. Enough of you. Critical mass. Excellent. If you look in there, you'll see a thing called the World Factbook. And what that is, it's an aggregation of the data gathered by the Central Intelligence Agency. But it's not like a bunch of spies with, you know, obscure fish toxins that they inject into people and then kill them and get their information. Most of what the CIA does is what I would do. They sit around and they read local newspapers, they talk to people, they look at what are called vital statistics, you know, what are the economic indicators, what are the demographic indicators, and what they're building is a kind of profile of each of these countries. What does it look like, okay? Now, I don't have any idea whether, I'm never terribly confident in the screen share function on this, but let me see if I can do this and you tell me if you can see it. Let me first go to the fact book. Okay, it might be too small, but let's see what this looks like to you. Hold on just a second. Okay, we're going to share screen one. Okay, now, can you see that? What are you seeing right now?
World,
What's that?
World Fact Book.
Okay, I can't hardly hear you.
The World Fact Book.
All right, so assuming that you can in fact see that, can you see what I'm doing here where I go down to this thing that says, please select a country to view? Okay, so you're gonna go there and I mentioned, let's see, what did I mention? Azerbaijan, okay? So there's Azerbaijan. And say I wanna know more about that because it's in the news. That and Armenia are in the news right now. So I go to Azerbaijan, and what it is gonna do, first of all, it's gonna give me something that's really useful. It's going to give me a location map. In other words, here's Azerbaijan. More importantly though, here's the part of the world in which it's located, okay? Oh, this must be important. Why? Because not only does it border Armenia, and there's a disputed boundary designation right now, it borders Russia and Iran. So I guess that's a part of the world I might want to think about. Do you see how already that changes my view of what Azerbaijan means? And why it's like, okay, no wonder Russia's getting involved in this. I wonder if Iran has anything to do with this. I don't know. Armenia may not leap to the front of your brain. Okay, so then there's an overview on the country here. If you do this drop down, it gives you its background, how was it created, a little bit of its history. That's a good thing to know, but I'm gonna go to geography, okay? And what that's gonna do is it's gonna tell me where in the world it is, okay? Because a lot of what we do internationally is we're doing sort of political, cultural, or social geography. If you get into cultural anthropology or even, physical anthropology, and you're looking at geography, it isn't just that you're looking at, what the landmass looks like. What's the implication of that landmass for the people who live there? Does it affect social formations there? What's the interaction between the physical location of a place and the people who live there, okay? And so we need to know that. What continent is it on? Well, it's in Southwestern Asia, so it's an Asian country. Okay, all right, I'll buy that. Tells you a little bit about the area of it, and various other kinds of things. The climate, which might tell you something about what kind of resources it might have or whatever. In other words, you see how the CIA is trying to build up a profile of this country. The people in society, okay? It's going to tell you the population, and it's going to tell you how recent that estimate is, because all that population are estimates, right? Okay, and nationality. Who are these people? Well, they're Azerbaijani. That's what they call themselves. Okay, well, I need to know that because I need to be polite. This notion of ethnic groups can sometimes explain where there's tension. One of the things you'll notice here in Azerbaijan, it's 91.6% Azerbaijani. That's an overwhelming ethnic majority, okay? Now, the thing is that pretty much everybody there is white. This isn't about race. It's about ethnic identity. What are your cultural lodestones? What's the shared history you have? What determines your identity for you? That's ethnicity, okay? Now you'll notice that down here, after Russian is Armenian, 1.3% Armenian. So you're like, well, what are they fighting about? They're fighting about a region that had been in territorial Azerbaijan that has a majority Armenian population that broke away from Azerbaijan back in 1994. Okay, and there's been a ceasefire since roughly 95. Okay, well, then that means, okay, you've got an ethnic minority there that has a grievance against the ethnic majority. Have they been discriminated against? Well, I don't know yet, but this is going to help me know what to think about. Okay? So far, am I making sense? Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay, good. Then there are variables on their economy, their supplies of energy, the nature of communications, military and security, and so on, okay? One of the things that we can do, and I'm going to stop sharing, I think, for now. Hold on just a second. Okay, now you should be seeing the regular screen. Is that so? Okay, sorry about that. It's a little tedious. The assignment that I'm giving you is going to ask you to do that with a selection of countries, okay? Now, at this point, I don't really need you to draw any conclusions about it. I'm guessing that you might start to if you apply yourself to the assignment. Okay. If you look at what's called the orienteering form, you download that. There are certain things I'm asking you to look up. You can use the CIA Factbook and others. You see how this is something you can do in 20 minutes. Okay. You have until Sunday night. Okay. It's probably better if you do it before the weekend so it doesn't screw up your weekend. But I just want you to get used to using this very valuable source. And it's not perfect, but it's reliable, the CIA Factbook, in order to get the kind of information we might use, not only to learn more about individual countries, but maybe we can get an idea of how to compare them. What distinguishes one country from another? Sometimes it's ethnicity. Sometimes it's the level of their, their economic power or something like that, all right? I want you to be able to do that. So what you do is you download what's called the orienteering form, you fill that out, and then you upload it to that link below it. Okay? Does that make sense, what I'm asking you to do? Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, sorry. Patricia, yes.
Are those instructions on Moodle?
Yes.
I don't know what you meant by downloading something.
Well, if you're on Moodle, you will see there's a thing called an orienteering form. If you click on it, it will download for you into wherever your magically transmitted downloads go. Okay, that's the form you use that I want you to fill out. It just says, okay, take any of these countries here. There's an assortment of countries and find these things about them, about each of the countries in some format that I can read and make sense of. Again, I'm not asking you to write anything. This isn't, it's just give me the stuff. Most of it will be numbers. Okay. And it's just it's an exercise designed to familiarize you with how we might go about finding out more about a country. It also relates to what we were just talking about, where if you hear a country mentioned in the news and you have no idea what they're talking about, and I would suggest, by the way, that you take a quick look when you get offline at this tension between Armenia and Azerbaijan. At least know what's Armenia and what's Azerbaijan. It's going to make more sense to you. Then you can make a decision as to whether or not, or the degree to which you want to keep current with that. I understand we all have other priorities right now. So that's the purpose of the exercise, to get you thinking regionally and globally, rather than just thinking, well, I'm an American, I don't care about that stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, now, you have plenty of time to do this. There is no reason for anyone to ask for additional time to complete this assignment. Okay, what I normally would have done is had this thing due tomorrow. Okay, but I'm trying to give everyone plenty of time because you have other classes and I don't know what your assignment load is like right now or anything else. There's no reason at all, no legitimate reason why anyone in this class should fail to complete that assignment by Sunday night. Okay? I don't care what the circumstances are. There just isn't. What that means is, as I say, unless approved by the instructor, no late assignments will be accepted. So if you don't do that assignment, you don't get credit for it. It's gone, never to return. These are easy assignments. Do the easy ones. Everybody got 10 points for the thing we did last week in class, just for showing up. Okay. I can't remember, honestly. I'd have to go back and look at my syllabus again because I revised it several times right before the term started. I think this is another 10-point or so assignment, but whatever it is, if you do the assignment, you make a good faith effort, you get the points. It's not like an ABCDF kind of thing, okay? I just don't care about that kind of stuff. I don't want you to obsess over your grade here so much as you figure, okay, well, he's kind of obviating my need to worry about the grade right now. He's just saying, do the assignment. Just get it done. I mean, I know it seems a little bit middle school, but we lose that ability to think that way when we're not asked to do it. So that's why I think it's important for me to explain to you why I would have you do an assignment like that. I think it's perfectly legitimate of me to be compelled to explain that to you. All right, is there anything else? Okay. A number of people did not show up to class today, and I have no idea why. I think what people have realized is I don't have to go to class. I can watch the recording of it. Okay, you can, but that means you're going to have to sit through this recording, and it's not exactly a page turner, right? But, you're adults, and, some of you can drive cars and everything, and, some people let you borrow money, and So whatever, you can make that informed decision. But remember the deadline, and it explains in the description when you get to the Moodle page. The deadline is Sunday night at 11 o'clock. Any last minute questions? Any concerns? Okay, well, it's going to take me a couple of minutes, but once I shut this down, I'll have to process this video. I'll upload it to YouTube, and then I'll add that link to the Moodle site for 250, just in case you want to go back. You probably won't today. We did a lot of kind of, you know, thinking outside the box stuff today, although I think it was valuable. All right, so I will see you then on Monday. And on Monday, I want you to look at those links under Module 2. I do not expect you to have memorized them or anything else, but it might not be the worst thing in the world for you to look, at least think, okay, what are the themes we're going to be dealing with in the next couple of weeks? Okay, and you'll see there's industrialization, urbanization, secularization, globalization, and deindustrialization. Okay, I don't want you to worry about them because you have an assignment right now and I want you to concentrate on that. But if, you know, sometime before 10:30 on Monday, you got a free 10 minutes or something, just take a look at the Moodle site and at least see, okay, here are the things we're going to be talking about. Okay? All right, I'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.